everybody. Brian's the new Meg.
Brian's the new Meg.
Yeah, you're the new me.
Shut up, Meg.
Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Go to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, it might get ugly out there on Sunday, man. And when I'm talking ugly, I'm not talking for the Chargers for once, man. As Chargers fans, in the last couple of years, we've expected games to go a little bit sideways. And even games like the one we're about to play on Sunday, maybe a bit of uneasiness, right? And I would say, in any game that you're playing a professional football team, you want to go in with some caution. But this week, man, especially after last week, the Chargers, ramping up versus the Raiders, who have a very good defense, finding a way to win and breaking tradition of Chargers choking in the fourth quarter. Now moving into week 2 that features a less than stellar Carolina Panthers team, I think the confidence is building. And that's going to be kind of the theme of today's video. Building up, ramping up. The Chargers found a way to ramp in the last game and find success. This week going into a situation with the Panthers, another game to try and get things right, to put in order the Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman offense, to continue the domination of the Jesse Minter defense. It's an opportunity to really grab some momentum before hitting some opponents like the Pittsburgh Steelers and even the Kansas City Chiefs in week 4. Kind of an important game, under the surface. On the surface, it might look like, hey, man, we're going to pummel these dudes into the ground. It's going to be crazy. But honestly, the way that you go about it, and honestly, no game is a free win in this league, is also very important. And we're going to go over all the things in this game I think the Chargers need to pay attention to and try and build on this one. Before we do kick things off, man, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to match you first, or I should say receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Guys, check this out, man. If you want to be playing Underdog the right way, always take advantage of the specials. We got the new customer free pick. We got for the Caleb Williams. We got the CeeDee Lamb free pick for everybody out there. It really is the best way to navigate the platform and make some nice moolah along the way, man. We've been doing pretty well ourselves. And again, just pay attention to all these things on this tab up here, man. You got Lamb, you got boosters, you got all these tokens and stuff. Definitely the way to do it. Now, before we do kickoff, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to the like, sub, bell notification. Helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Into the end zone, Charger fans are witnesses to history!
Your Chargers at Panthers game preview for week 2. Let's go ahead and start things off the way we always do. The injury report. Well, I'm going to say this week, definitely a little different than last week. Last week we were the bill of health, right? We were definitely one of those teams that walked onto the field with most of our players, not a lot of concerns. And there's a two-parter to this. For one, the list is definitely more extensive than it was last week, which does make me a little bit nervous. Like, how are we gonna go out there and find a rhythm and some consistency without our players on the field? Well, again, the other side of it is the Chargers have been showing a lot of caution throughout the preseason, throughout the offseason, that I think is being exercised here in some way. Okay, the first way I think is, you're going to see a lot of guys in the injury report because the Chargers, being overly cautious, are going to be letting guys have more limited practice, sometimes sitting out practice like we're seeing here with Khalil Mack. Not injury related. You're going to see some rest days for some of these veterans, but also some of the limited practices. This is something that we saw all off season. Guys working off to the side, guys working with trainers, guys, really paying close attention to even the minorest or the smallest details and keeping these guys healthy. So I would say on the surface, this doesn't worry me as much because we're probably just easing into a new way of doing things that the Chargers have been exercising with brand new Ben Herbert in the building, the new strength and conditioning coach. That's one of the best in the country. or even in the world. So maybe this isn't what it looks like on the surface. Even if it is, this may be another way of the Chargers saying, hey, the matchup may provide an opportunity for a little bit more rehab and rest for some of these guys, like Joey Bosa, who maybe was a little banged up last week. Maybe like Jasir Taylor, who might need, a week out. He's not been practicing this week. That's something that they may take advantage of. I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of these guys, especially the limited practice guys, are just being cautioned by the team. The guys that I do think we do need to pay attention to, though, are the ones that I do expect to maybe see some rest this week. Joey Bosa, who has been listed, limited, and not practicing on Thursday, is someone that could realistically sit out this game. Now, at the time of recording this video, we do know that Joey Bosa is out on the field practicing today on Friday, and I do think that does give us a good opportunity, or at least chance for Joey Bosa to see the field, which would honestly be a disaster for the Carolina Panthers. But, for the Chargers, that's something that, is going to be an important part of their identity. So if he doesn't play, not a big deal. We got really good depth at the position. But if he does play, definitely a sign of things to come for the season as to being cautious in practice and then rolling out on Sunday with the squad. The other guys to keep an eye out, Alohi Gilman, knee injury, hasn't been practicing this week. This will be one to monitor. The Chargers would likely elevate guys like Tony Jefferson from the practice squad here soon to make sure that position is nice and firm. Chargers played really, really well in terms of defense last week. Alohi Gilman, a big part of that, yes, but I do think that they will be able to survive a game or two without Alohi just because of how good the pressure has been from the edge position. And then finally, the last guy to mention down here, Jasir Taylor. Again, another example of, next man up, best man, behind these guys. I really do feel like Tariq Still, who has been practicing in full, is a really nice backup at nickel for the Chargers that is going to maybe see some action this week. So look out for some of the rookies to maybe see, some action. You might see a little bit more of, Brendan Rice. You might see a little bit more Tariq Still, or maybe even Cam Hart. I think it's a good opportunity for the Chargers to go out there and get these guys some reps and show what we've got out there in terms of depth. As for the Carolina Panthers, they're not any better in terms of their health. Of course, a lot of these guys, maybe again, precautionary. Some of the guys that could miss time, Jadeveon Clowney hadn't been practicing, but he has gotten a full practice in as of Friday. Not practicing here, though, backup running back. You also got limited practice in for Taylor Moton and Robert Hunt. These are starting offensive linemen. And again, it's going to be a very, very long day for Bryce Young and this offense if any of the starting offensive linemen were to miss any time. Tommy Tremble, tight end, is questionable. Punter Johnny Hecker, also questionable. And then again, Damian Lewis, another offensive lineman, also listed as questionable. So something to keep an eye out, because the Panthers, who are already kind of destitute in terms of, maybe their hopes for the season and protecting Bryce Young, seeing what not one, not two, but three offensive linemen questionable for this game. And of course, others even listed. It's definitely something to be concerned about if you are our Carolina Panthers fan. Let's go ahead and move into our first category of this game. A talking point, I should say. We're going to say the ramp-up week. And this is going to be a two-parter. Part one, ramp-up week started for the Chargers last week. And I think this is a great representation to how I view the Chargers per game, like individual games versus the entire season as a whole, right? In an individual game, the Chargers found themselves needing a little bit of momentum and success in some of their strengths, right? They had to inject some extra fuel into helping out their pass rush and helping out their run game, I would say specifically. Very slow start for the offense. The defense definitely got off to a faster start than the Yo. You did see a little bit more pressure, a little bit more of that identity pass rush from the Chargers D a little bit earlier, but the offense took a little bit of time, right? And that individual game, I think, does help represent a good visual for the actual entirety of the season. It took a little bit of time. The Chargers' new head coach, new offense, a lot of new. Justin Herbert coming into his this first game since week 9 of last season. We needed a bit of time to ease into things, right? We're in that upwards crescendo. And what's important to me is that the Chargers found that crescendo after the first half last week, really came out the gates hot and dominated the Raiders in the second half, which again, very uncharacteristic for the Chargers, but very characteristic for a Jim Harbaugh team. That ramp up, I do think, again, is also symbolic to what we could start seeing even now in week 2. This is a really good opportunity for the Chargers in week 2. Here's the second part of it, to take a situation that is not great for the opponent and make it a tool in building up our season for the Chargers. And what I mean by that is, I don't think it's any secret that the Carolina Panthers are probably going to struggle this season. They've not had a lot of success on offense. The defense has looked even worse at times. I think even right now at the start of the season, it's kind of easy to say this may be the worst team in the NFL. And again, no disrespect to Panthers fans or the Panthers team. They're going to need some time to figure things out, but I don't know if they've had quite enough time in week 2 to stop a juggernaut head coach like Jim Harbaugh, okay? And in using the situation that the Carolina Panthers are in, maybe we can continue our crescendo, our upward trajectory, our ramp up to helping the Chargers catch their footing as a new identity of the squad, right? The run team, the tough defensive team, and this could be a good opportunity to, again, gain momentum as we head into a little bit tougher weeks like the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's why I think this could end up being a pretty important game, despite, if the Chargers win by a little or a lot, which is what I'm going to definitely predict. The way that they go about it and the way they gain momentum is also going to be very important, even with the end result being a win. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at why the situation is the way it is for the Carolina Panthers. This is the realistic and the reality of the situation the Chargers are walking into in week 2. And again, I'm not trying to be big-headed here. I'm not trying to count chickens before they hatch and all that kind of stuff. But realistically, as a football fan, as someone who had, a New Orleans Saints in my fantasy team and high hopes for Bryce Young, I had my eye on this game a little bit. And of course, in research of our matchup this week, I went back and looked at some of the work that the Saints did versus this team last week. And man, it was brutal. It was a bloodbath out there. And the Panthers' epic collapse seems to have gotten to a very, very unfortunate start for Carolina. The Panthers absolutely disintegrated last week, losing to the Saints 47-10. And I get it, right? Things can happen. Maybe it's an anomaly. Maybe it's an outlier game. Maybe the Panthers really pick it up and kick it into second gear this game. Always something you got to pay attention to. Never take for granted any matchup in the NFL. These are professional teams. You got to go in level-headed every week, okay? But also realistically, as a fan, it's going to be something, again, we can take advantage of. The Panthers on defense gave up 180 yards rushing, 200 yards passing, and 5 touchdowns last week. This is a really good opportunity to get the offense up to par. Let's get that rhythm going. Let's get that Greg Roman offense off the ground. Let's take this opportunity while we have it to build the confidence of the offense to move into future matchups. And also to help Justin Herbert shake off a little bit more rust. He looked a lot better in the second half even last week. Let's continue with that on this week, man. Let's fully shake off that rust. If Derek Carr could go 19 for 23 and 200 yards with 3 touchdowns, I think Justin Herbert could have a huge bounce back week this week. And again, we're not looking for 300-400 yards anymore as Chargers fans from Justin Herbert, but anywhere between 200 and 250 yards this game would actually look like a pretty big dub and bounce back to me. And of course, any touchdowns are certainly appreciated as well, okay? And will definitely help out his case. And you know what? There is the potential to see a 350-yard game as well any given week when you have Justin Herbert, but it's no longer required for him to shoulder the entire offense of this squad. Let's see how that looks versus a team like the Carolina Panthers, okay? As for the run game, again, Kamara and Jamal Williams, these guys went crazy last week. 121 yards, 2 touchdowns combined for those guys. It's going to be nasty out there. The Chargers have a really good opportunity, again, to get this offense off the ground. Not to mention the Panthers also lost, in my opinion, the best player on their team, Derek Brown, defensive lineman, probably one of the better run-stopping defensive tackles in the NFL. He's gone. I think they put him even on IR. So what was a really nasty situation last week for the Panthers ended up getting even worse this week with not only a team that's going to be emphasizing the run game, but also you're lacking your best defensive weapon to stop that or even slow it down. Jim Harbaugh is going to recognize that and take advantage of it. And again, it's a very good opportunity to help the Greg Roman tempo get off the ground. All right? Now, what about on offense? What are the Chargers' defense in for? Well, offensively, it was almost worse, which is kind of crazy to think about. The defense let up 47 points. How could the offense be any worse? Well, Bryce Young, and this actually kind of pains me because I'm a believer in Bryce Young, man. I mean, even now, I think he can maybe figure it out along the way. I think he's in a really bad situation. I feel for the guy, all right? But on offense, let's not fool ourselves. He struggled last week. Bryce Young completed just 13 passes on 30 attempts, y'all. 30 attempts for 13 completions. That is absolutely putrid. On top of that, he threw 2 interceptions while the team added another fumble. I think there was 3, total turnovers against the Carolina Panthers. It's awful out there, man. If you're a Panthers fan right now, you're looking at the season thinking, man, we might want to sit this one out. But what about their run game director? Just as bad, man. Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, right? Those are the guys kind of splitting carries right now. They combined for a measly 36 yards on the ground this week. That was on 11 attempts, so maybe they try getting the ground game going a little bit early. That's going to be really tough versus a Chargers defense that looks like they have a really stout defensive line all of a sudden. Those interior defenders have been really good versus the run. Poona Ford looks absolutely amazing. So I don't know if this is the game that they start getting that run attack up to speed. And this is against the Saints defense, which, yes, is pretty solid. I'll give it to the Saints. I like the Saints this season. I think their defense is going to help carry Derek Carr a little bit. The offense obviously got to a very hot start this week 1. But I also do believe that they are not as dangerous as the Chargers when it comes to pass rush. Again, I like the Saints. I'm a believer of the Saints. But when you put them side by side with the Chargers, in specifically that category on defense of the pass rush, I think the Chargers are going to be very hard to beat by any team in the NFL when it comes to the talent and depth at that position. Let's move into the next category. Good segue here. This segment called The Feast. Now, yes, Joey Bosa may not play this week. That's something that could definitely happen. I still think there's a chance he does. But I wouldn't be upset if they decide to play a little careful and let him sit this one out. You know why? Because this rotation is still insane. We still have Khalil Mack. We still have Tuli Tuipulotu. We still have Bud Dupree. We still have Morgan Fox and Tito and Poona Ford and Scott Matlock. All these guys combined to create still one of the deepest and most lethal and dangerous pass rushes in the NFL. Right? I think we will be just fine. If Joey were to sit out, Tuli should see an increased role opposite Khalil Mack, but Dupree would rotate in nicely. It would still be very dangerous. And this is not good news for the Panthers. The Panthers' offense is already bleeding. The Chargers' pass rush may just be the dagger to the heart in this one because I don't see MS in any way, shape, or form slowing it down, especially if any of these injuries that we see on their injury report in terms of offensive line end up actually sitting out or having a bad game because of it. Like, I think it's going to be pretty brutal. And again, we're not rooting against, we're not rooting against players not to play or anything like that. But the reality of the situation is if there's any hindrance there to that line and it gets any worse than it was last week, and you put him versus this particular defense with this particular talent at this particular position, it could be an absolute bloodbath out there. Because as a Chargers fan, yes, it's my job to hype up the team. It's my job to get excited. It's my job to pump you guys up. But the reality of the situation, fanboy aside, homer, opinions aside, this defense is nasty. The pass rush is nasty. And Bryce Young, who was already struggling, the run game, which was already struggling, the offense, which is already struggling, they are going to panic once that line starts to fold under the pressure and under the immense weight of this crazy pass rushing unit. It's absurd how good it is and how deep it is at this point. I wouldn't be shocked if the Chargers topped 4 sacks this week. That's what they ended up with last week, right? 4 sacks versus the Raiders. I would be absolutely, unfazed if we went like 5 or 6 sacks this week. Especially if Bosa ends up playing, it could get pretty out of hand really quick out there. So I think that's probably one of the biggest points of emphasis on the defense to pay attention to. And with the pass rush succeeding, you are going to see guys, even if Jasir Taylor doesn't play this week, you are going to see guys that are playmakers back there have opportunities to do something. Tareeb Still ended up being a really nice playmaker out of the nickel this preseason. Junior Colson. Dayan Henley looked fantastic last week, right? Then you got Derwin, right? You got the safeties. Maybe Tony Jefferson plays. Who knows? The corners have been looking good outside of Tareeb Still, too. Or I should say Jasir Taylor, too. Asante's looked great, right? Christian Fulton looks awesome. I don't know, man. Defense could have a big one this week. Now, we accidentally jumped to this slide a little early. The Justin Herbert's bounce back as well. We alluded to this at the top with the Panthers collapse segment. Justin Herbert shaking off some rust. Again, very good opportunity to continue that. The ramp up, right? Like we talked about. And Justin Herbert, I think, is an important aspect of this week's game plan. If I were Greg Roman and I were Jim Harbaugh and I understood the situation Justin was brought into, I would look at some of last week's tape and say, hey, we got to put him in situations where he makes the right call this time, where he finds opportunities to improve and remember, like, yeah, you're a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. Because last week, yeah, I went back and rewatched it, and Justin Herbert, was missing some guys. His field vision maybe needs a little bit of improvement. There were guys wide open, sometimes for touchdowns that he could have gone for. Again, it got a lot better in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. But I would like to see that, again, given to Justin Herbert in terms of opportunity to just really get back into that rhythm. And I think, again, if I were the coaching staff, I would definitely take this opportunity to do so, because if Derek Carr could have a really good game, one of the best games in week 1 out of all quarterbacks in the NFL, then Justin Herbert should have no problem going out there and being the superstar Justin Herbert we all know and love. He's going into a new offense, new rhythm, new offensive lineman out there too, including the new center Bradley Bozeman, who's playing in a revenge game this week versus the Panthers. Good opportunity right now, though, to help get that ship right. So I would expect Justin Herbert to have a pretty solid day, right? Didn't even throw for 200 yards last week. I think it was like 140-something. I would definitely expect over 200 yards this week, and I would expect some of his weapons to have a pretty solid week as well. That includes guys that maybe don't have their own segment like Quentin Johnston or Josh Palmer this week, but it could definitely end up being a pretty good one, okay? Out of the Chargers offense, though, if I were betting one guy had a pop-off week, I would say it would probably be J.K. Dobbins once again. Y'all, dude, I'm not going to say, like, because I cover a very wide range of topics, right? And so I have a very wide range of things that I've said over the offseason, of topics that I have footage of or whatever. But one that I did talk about quite frequently was the potential of J.K. Dobbins this season. This was one of my hot takes. I think even before the day before the season started, I was like, hey, J.K. Dobbins is going to be a top 10 running back in the NFL if he can stay on the field. Maybe even top 5 if he really starts popping off. And here we have it. Week 1, the dude popped off for 140 yards. The touchdown looked absolutely fantastic. This week, going into week 2, again, the Panthers without Derek Brown, the Chargers likely going to grab the lead pretty early here, then start leaning into the Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, pound it, run it down their throats kind of style offense. I would not be shocked if J.K. Dobbins ends the week as a top 3 running back at the position in terms of yards. And in terms of fantasy football, I would definitely be excited to see this guy this particular week. Again, it sucks for the Panthers. I feel bad for Derek Brown, but that was their best shot at slowing down this offense. And this includes Gus Edwards, by the way. I would say, yeah, there's a little danger there if you're a fantasy football player, Gus Edwards going in there and vulturing some touchdowns or what have you. But I think J.K. Dobbins is emerging as the number 1 running back of this team. And I think, I wouldn't be shocked if he followed up last week's 100-and-something yard performance with another 100-yard performance this week and maybe another touchdown, man. J.K.'s resurrection tour off to a very good start, and I don't want to see it slow down quite yet, man. Again, with the opportunity to ramp up and gain momentum, I want to see players like J.K. Dobbins given opportunities to continue that growth and confidence versus a team like the Panthers this week. So J.K., I would expect him to have a pretty big day. Another player I think is going to have a pretty sizable day. And what I mean by pretty sizable is, man, you're going to see some statements made after this one. NFL Network's going to be buzzing. There's going to be talk about, hey, man, who's the big bad from this draft class? Is it Marvin Harrison or is it Ladd McConkey? Man, I think Ladd's going to have a pretty spectacular day, dudes. Again, the Saints, I wouldn't label them as the big deep threat team, not by a long shot, but they were hitting some ridiculous passes by Derek Carr this last week. I would say Ladd McConkey is both faster and maybe more capable in terms of route running than a lot of those weapons by the New Orleans Saints. And I think Justin Herbert, as soon as he finds his groove, is going to see a couple of big opportunities to hit perhaps what is turning into his new favorite target, Ladd McConkey. McConkey, I think he ended up getting 7 targets last week for 5 receptions. I would expect to continue seeing that relationship grow. I would be shocked if we saw anything less than what we saw last week in terms of targets. I would say let's give him his first 10-target game this week, right? Really, again, get that rhythm going. Justin Herbert missed a big portion of training camp. Those are valuable reps that he needed with these brand new wide receivers. It's pretty much brand new offense out there. Now we have an opportunity versus the Panthers, who really are struggling to help get that rhythm back, right? Because we saw it. I saw it in person early in training camp before Justin Herbert went down. I want to see that kindled now. I want to see Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer. I want to see Brendan Rice out there this week. I'm going to be very clear on that too. If the Chargers, are going to be without DJ Chark for a while, definitely want to see a little bit of Brendan Rice out there too as well. But I think the number one guy to look out for is going to be Ladd McConkey, and I want to see that relationship in particular grow as much as possible in this game, because we're going to need that connection to be as firm as possible when we face the Steelers, who are a sneaky good team this year, and of course the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 4 coming up towards the end of the month. Okay, next up, we have a potential revenge game on our hands, too. Hayden Hurst, of course, formerly of the Carolina Panthers, saw a couple of nice plays last week. I would hope to see the tight end position as a whole become more involved. It felt like the tight end position was less than polished last week. Not just in terms, blocking, it could have been good. I think we were really distracted, though, by the fact that they had a ton of penalties and that they weren't really involved in terms of the pass too much. There was one really good pass to Hayden Hurst that I hope that, again, that confidence and relationship and chemistry is built upon with Justin Herbert. But the tight end position as a whole could see a nice boost this week because of the revenge game narrative that we might see between the Panthers and, of course, Hayden Hurst. And then finally, the last topic, the Control-Alt-Delete narrative from last week. Let's go ahead and Control-C that to this week. Let's copy that over to Week 2 for the Chargers. There's other photos out there, but I love this one, man. Joe Alt had literally one of the best rookie debuts I've ever seen. And it's one of those that if you blink, you would have missed it, right? It feels like the whole NFL sort of missed it. On one hand, the next day, I saw my feed flooded by PFF and all these guys talking about how incredibly, impressive and insane a debut he had versus, Max Crosby, and it was awesome to see that recognition. And then when it counted like a day later, where they're going out with like the best NFL rookie debuts of 2024, Joe Alt was like all the way at like number 8. I'm like, nah, dude, how many narratives were even close to this in the NFL in Week 1? One of the best pass rushers in the NFL versus a rookie tackle that switched sides that got completely shut down. Yeah, man, I think Joe Alt is a real one. I think we got ourselves a stud, and I want to see that continue this week. The Panthers do, again, I don't know how dangerous their pass rush is going to end up being, but I want to see that dominance by Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater continue. All right. Offensive line, if there's one thing that I'm going to be paying very close attention to this week, it's actually the interior. If the interior can improve and we see a bit more success from Gus Edwards and JK up the middle, then I'll feel a little bit better going into next week versus Pittsburgh Steelers. Finally, my score prediction for this one. Y'all are wondering how the Chargers perform in a situation where the offense is going to have some opportunity, where the defense is going to have some time to feast out there via pass rush. I'm going to give, of course, the Chargers the win in this one. And again, very important to the way we win. Not just that we win, but the way we win, in my opinion, in ramping up this team and getting ready for some tough opponents in the next couple of games. I got the Chargers winning 31 to the Panthers 9. Which, again, reflects on the Chargers finding a nice rhythm on offense. Everyone's getting a little slice. Everyone's getting a little action. While on the side, the Chargers defense, limiting a struggling defense to under 10 points, I also think is a pretty good thing to go into the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 3. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Please leave your score predictions in the comments section below. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Man, if y'all wanted a Bryce Young burrito, gobble that up, feast in terms of a Bosa, a Mac, a Thule, this will be the week to see that happen, man. It's going to be brutal out there.